As enthusiastic as you are, and so glad to be here because I'm JB Pritzker and I'm going to go beat Bruce Rounder. And we're going to put Springfield back on the side of working families. It is about time. Now, Tracy talked about a number of issues that I think are very important, but I want to step back for a second to tell you how important I think this election really is. I happen to think that 2018 is the most important election year in our lifetime. Now, I realize that many of us who've been around politics for a long time have heard people say that every election cycle, that this one's the most important. But in 2018, we've got an awful lot at stake. We've got a racist xenophobe in the White House. He's got to be stopped.
Yes.
And we can do it in the midterm elections because we can elect Sean Casten to beat Peter Roscoe. We can elect Lauren Underwood, who's going to take down Hultgren. We have two other races in the state. We have Betsy Landrigan, who's going to beat Rodney Davis. And all the way downstate, Brendan Kelly's going to take out Mike Boss. 4 races that are on the red from blue track, and we can do it, and we all need to do it together. You know, from the very beginning of my campaign, I have talked about not just winning the governor's office and lieutenant governor's office, but winning up and down the ticket for Democrats. That means sending Bob Morgan to Springfield. Now, we've got a lot of work to do. We've got to re-elect great Democrats that are already there, like Julie Morrison. Thank you very much. I'm sure I am skipping others in the room, and I don't mean to, but let me just say that to win in 2018, we have to do what we Democrats traditionally do to win. And that's, we've got to get out the vote. We've got to knock on doors, we've got a phone bank, and I'm so proud that we're putting together and have put together that kind of grassroots campaign all across the state. 102 counties, some of you didn't know there are 102 counties maybe in the state of Illinois. There are 102 counties in the state, and we're not forgetting any one of them. Because even in counties like Jasper County, where there are 1,000 Democrats and 12,000 Republicans, this is not an electoral college system, folks. Those 1,000 Democrats matter. We've got to get them out to vote. We've got to get Democrats out to vote all across the state, and we are motivated, aren't we?
Yes.
And so we're working, we've opened 18 offices already across the state of Illinois, working for all Democrats up and down the ticket, including helping our federal races like Sean Casten beating Roscoe. We need to do more. In the primary, we managed in our primary campaign to knock on 680,000 doors in the primary. We have to double that in the general election. We made 2.4 million person-to-person volunteer phone calls across the state. 2.4 million, I think you got 1 million of them yourself, didn't you? We made a lot of phone calls in the primary. We have to double up on that because that's how we win. That is how we do it. I've been doing this since I was a little kid. My mother, and I want to give credit where credit's due, my mother was an activist. My mother I'd like to say dragged me around, because when I was 8 years old, it felt like being dragged around. But all of you who have 8-year-olds, please drag them with you, because they might end up running for governor someday. Maybe not. But seriously, knocking on doors for progressive Democratic candidates when I was a little kid made me engaged. And we were back then, we were also licking stamps and envelopes and sending flyers out for candidates and for progressive Democratic candidates. I didn't say any of this during the primary much, but one of the very first candidates that I went walking around with my mother for was Teddy Kennedy running for president. I didn't say that in the primaries, but I was running against a Kennedy, so I had to keep that in the tank. But I want you to know, I know how we win elections. And it's making sure that we motivate our base and that we do what Democrats do. Now, we have a lot of challenges in the state of Illinois that we've got to solve. The first and foremost, most important thing that we've got to do is get rid of the guy who's standing in the way of progress, and that's Bruce Rauner. Why is that? Now, I want to tell you something that some of you may or may not have paid attention to. During the budget, well, you know, when you say budget about Bruce Rauner, you're talking about 3 years of utter and complete failure. But let's talk about just this last 6 months. Bruce Rauner finally proposed a budget. Finally. And the budget that he proposed would cost property taxpayers in the state of Illinois $1 billion. Right? Am I right, Julie?
Right.
$1 billion. He wanted to push liabilities from the state to local governments and cost property taxpayers $1 billion. That was how he was going to help balance the budget of the state. Remember that. Because Bruce Rauner is also the guy who says property taxes are too high and he wants to freeze on property taxes. But he never tells you how he's going to solve the real problem. The problem that causes your property taxes to be too high, which is how are you going to pay for the schools? We have the worst funding mechanism in the state of Illinois for schools. We do, the worst in the nation. Well, okay, second to worst. We're 49th out of 50 states in the way we fund schools. State government pays for 26% of education funding. And most of the rest of education funding falls on local property taxpayers. And that's wrong. Almost every other state has moved away from that and has gone to about half and half. Half from the state, half from local property taxes. We're at 1/4 and 3/4. So you wonder, well, what are we going to do about that? I think we need a progressive income tax system. Now, some people, there are political consultants who would say, well, don't talk about tax. You're a Democrat. You can't talk about taxes because they'll just beat you over the head with it. I'm not talking about taxes. I'm talking about schools. That's what I'm talking about. I think that we need to fund our schools fairly. We need to make sure that every child in this state gets a quality education, no matter the color of their skin, no matter the income level of their parents, no matter the zip code they live in. Everybody deserves a quality education. We got to fund it properly. Now, I believe that a progressive income tax allows us to do that. Almost every other state in the United States has a progressive income tax. And the federal government has a progressive income tax. And in Illinois, if you look at the tax burden, it falls inordinately on the bottom 20% of taxpayers and inordinately small on the top 1% of taxpayers. That's wrong. It's like 13% for the bottom 20, and it's like 4% for the top 1. That's wrong. How about if we just even that out some? It's local property taxes along with all the regressive taxes, sales taxes and otherwise that people are paying, together with a flat income tax at the state level. It's unfair. That's why we need a progressive income tax in this state. Now, that isn't the only thing we're running on, but I'm putting it forward to you because it is critical. If we want to fix the challenges of the state, that we are honest. Bruce Rauner is not honest.
No.
He is not honest a single day on this campaign trail. He says whatever is most politically expedient. I will tell you what I really think. I think we need to focus on the kitchen table issues that matter to people all across the state of Illinois, to working families that have been left out, left behind. You remember, wages have been stagnant for a decade. Cost of college education has gone up. The cost of healthcare has gone up. But wages are stagnant. So standards of living across the state are dropping. And that's not right. And we haven't had anybody really focusing on that, on the kitchen table, on the thousands of dollars we could put back on the table for people if we implement a public option and make sure more people in the state of Illinois get health care and do it with President Obama's idea, the one that I'm putting forward for the state of Illinois. We'll be the first in the nation to have it, but it'll bring down the cost of health insurance for people by thousands of dollars and put that back on the table and make it more affordable for those who don't have insurance. That isn't enough, because health care is a right, not a privilege. We got to make sure that everybody gets covered, but I don't want to wait the decade that people say it will take for us to actually have a full-on universal health care system in the state. That's wrong. We can start in January of 2019, and I intend to do that. Now, to make everything work, you know, we've got big financial challenges in the state. We've got to make sure we're paying the pensions that are owed to people who earn money. And Bruce Rauner tries to convince everybody that we can't afford it. Now remember first that it's not just a legal obligation that the Supreme Court of the state of Illinois has ruled on, so we got to pay it. It's also a moral obligation. Teachers in this state are not getting overpaid. They're not getting overpaid. I'm a teacher. You are?
Yeah.
You're not getting overpaid, I can tell you. And you took a job with a pension to go with it. That was the deal when you took the job. You shook hands, figuratively speaking, on that deal. Now, Bruce Rauner wants to say we're going to take away 20 or 30%, or, as has been rumored, that he tried to get in Washington them to include in that Trump tax bill, that horrid Trump tax bill, he tried to get them to include a provision that would allow Illinois to declare bankruptcy in our pension system. You can imagine what that would have done to this state and what it would have done to the pensions that are owed to people. Look, we can pay the pensions. He's wrong. It's just the problem I want to remind you is that Democrats and Republicans made a mistake in 1995 with the pension ramp, as they call it. It's an amortization schedule that looks like this. And it looks like this because I think they all thought they'd be leaving office at about here. Right? Now we're about here in that schedule. And, by the way, governors skipped payments along the way. That made the problem worse. So what would you do if you had this problem on your own home? What would you do? You'd raise this is the only way you could manage it because your pay isn't going to go up like this. So the only way you could manage it is to pay more in principal earlier and flatten out the payments going forward by paying more earlier. That's how you do it, and pay the pensions that are owed. That's the right way to do it. I'm being honest with you about how we're going to do it. Bruce Rauner hasn't said a word. He hasn't done anything about it. He tried to sneak around and take pensions away. I'm not going to do that, and I'll tell you what I really think. So in order to make all the financial challenges actually work, to make the state work for everybody, we got to create jobs. Bruce Rauner hasn't done any of that.
No kidding.
And one of the reasons for that is he doesn't understand where most of the jobs come from in the state. Most jobs are actually created by small businesses. 2/3 of all the jobs are created by small businesses. And the more small businesses we help get started, the more we help grow, the more likely we are to have big businesses and big employers in the state. Caterpillar was once a small business. There are a lot of companies that have opportunity to grow or get started in the state of Illinois if state government would actually help them get started. But that's not all. Remember, we can also attract big businesses to the state, but Bruce Rauner doesn't understand how. How do I know he doesn't understand how? Because he badmouths the state every single day. He says nothing nice about the state, and he invites governors from surrounding states to go on TV and badmouth the state of Illinois. And then he goes on foreign trade missions. Remember what a foreign trade mission is all about? Bringing companies and jobs to the state of Illinois, selling goods from the state of Illinois. What does he do? He badmouths the state when he's out of the country, too. I think you need a governor who's actually going to extol the most important virtue of the state, which is we've got the best educated, most dedicated workforce in the nation. We got to invest in that. I'll remind you one last thing about Bruce Rauner. You remember when he got elected, he was wearing that dry clean Carhartt jacket. And then in January he gets sworn in, and from underneath the Carhartt jacket he pulls out the hidden agenda. And the hidden agenda is destroy labor unions, lower wages in the state, lower workplace safety in the state. Now I want to say this to all of you who don't belong to labor unions. Labor unions are here for you too. Labor unions fight for working families. We cannot let Bruce Rauner have his way. Now, you want a governor who's actually trying to lower wages in the state, lower workplace safety? I think you ought to have one who wakes up every day trying to make people's lives better, trying to improve wages, trying to make sure that we strengthen people's right to bargain for their pay and for their workplace safety. So, last thing is, we got a fight ahead of us. Some of you see that Bruce Rauner apparently has nothing positive to say. because he hasn't done anything. It's been 3.5 years. Can you think of a single thing that Bruce Rauner has done for the people of the state of Illinois to lift up working families? Nothing. So he began his general election campaign like he ran the campaign against me in the primary. He's running the campaign in the general election all negative. That's his entire campaign. He has a 30% approval rating in the state. I happen to think that sounds high. But he's got a 30% approval rating, so there are a lot of people who think that Bruce Rauner can't possibly win. But you're wrong. He could. Because there was another guy that had a 30% approval rating and ran for president in 2016. And he won, and Bruce Rauner thinks he can win doing the same thing, which is trash the Democrats up and down the ticket, to take us all down, and take us all down with just negative commercials, negative messaging, because he doesn't believe, as we do, that there's a role for government. That government has the role of standing up for working families. That's what Springfield ought to be doing every single day, thinking about how to lift people up, how to help people that actually need government. That's the most important thing that I think we've got to change about the direction of the state of Illinois. But it's going to be a fight. We've got 134 days and 1 hour left. But I'm not counting. And I just want you to know, I mean, we are going to have to fight every single day. I know many of you are engaged in phone banking and door knocking, and you're helping candidates. Some of you are candidates, and thank all of you candidates who are running, because we're all going to run together, and I'm going to help you, and I think we're all going to win together. But we're only going to do it if we're ready for the fight. And I ask you, are you ready for the fight?
Yeah.